Hey, so my name is Carl Murphy. I'm the president and co-founder of Get Spiffy. Spiffy is a technology-enabled mobile car care and services company that is redefining how consumers and fleets service their vehicles everywhere. And this is the Operations Underground, where we interview people who are getting it done in and out of the automotive space. And today we have Aaron Summerville from the Spiffy training team. Welcome, Aaron. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Great, thanks, man. So for everyone who's not in Spiffy, like we have this whole like hello, sir, and ma'am thing, and so um, it's not 19th century England, but we have a lot of that in our language here. It's just a respect thing among folks. So Aaron does not need to call me sir. He just sort of likes doing it, much like I do the same thing. Hey, so Aaron, where are you located today?
So today I'm located here. I'm in Cary, North Carolina, not too far from my HQ.
Outstanding, outstanding. And you are on our training team. Normally, like it's always nice to start like, where did you grow up? Like what was Aaron Summerville doing at like 15 or 16 years old?
Oh yeah, gotcha, man. So I am from a little town, eastern North Carolina called Snow Hill, North Carolina. So first off, let's just go back to the hello, the sir and the ma'am thing, because where I'm from, I can't help it,
Yeah, no, it's
I got the Southern hospitality, the manners and all that kind of stuff. That's just what we do. We open the doors and all that kind of stuff. So
I'm familiar with.
sorry.
I've been through Snow Hill. I think I've ridden my bike through Snow Hill. So it's a
Oh yeah.
it's a typical small North Carolina town.
Yep.
So what were you doing in Snow Hill? Were you like an athlete? Were you like a student? Were you like a hooligan? Like what were you doing? Were you going?
Well, most of the time, if you've ridden through Snow Hill, then you know that we have a Bojangles, we have a food line, a couple gas stations, and and a whole lot of free land and woods area to stay busy.
Yeah,
So I grew up, both of my parents were entrepreneurs, so I was really I was really working with them from a pretty young age. Going into the later years of 15, 16, I dabbled in sports, but I'm telling you, man, work was really just like my
you grew up,
hobby of
you grew
sorts.
up working. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what did your mom and dad do? Tell me about what they were doing.
Yeah, so my mom had a daycare center for about 15 years. It was a five-star daycare center. She started with just me as a baby, in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that actually grew when they moved further east to Snow Hill. That grew and became one of the main daycare centers in our town. So
Right.
I started working with her there when I became of substantial age. And my dad actually he was in the criminal justice system, but then he later started his own landscaping business. So he was always busy.
Yeah.
I grew up, I drove dump trucks and
Right.
backhoes and all
Yeah.
kinds
Yeah.
of different tractors, all kinds of different things like that. So that's what they did. My dad was a landscaper and my mom was
Nice.
owner of the daycare center.
Nice. And so you're learning to work at a young age. You're watching mom and dad go to work. You're learning like, hey, we're gonna go do it ourselves. We don't like check in and swipe a card for time card for the man.
Yeah.
So then you what'd you do? Like, you graduate high school. What do you do? Like where'd you go? Did you go to college? Did you go to work? Did you move? Did you stay in Snow Hill?
Well, thankfully, I graduated high school. 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I was already going to Greensboro, North Carolina to NC A&T,
Uh,
HBCU out in Greensboro. Aggie Pride, if you went there.
yeah.
But so 2 weeks after I graduated, I was there, and that's probably one of the best things that probably could have happened for me. I was able to kind of get out of the small town
Mhm. Yeah.
routines that I was into, and I was out to the big city in Greensboro. So
Yeah.
if you call that big city, it was big city to me.
If you've been to Snow Hill, Greensboro is the big city.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, hey, look, they got skyscrapers, they have corporate headquarters, right? They got an
They have
airport,
a
right?
baseball team, it's like,
Exactly.
so it was
Exactly.
a big deal for me, man. As soon as I walked across the stage, 2 weeks, I got I was interested. I got into this summer internship kind of program to kind of like start my classes early and things like that for the summer. So as
Yep.
soon as I graduated in May, 2 weeks after, I was headed to Greensboro.
That's awesome. And then, so what were you studying at NCANT?
Well, I was on I'll probably talk about it a little later, but I was on the 5-year plan for sure in college, but
Yeah.
I started as a construction management, construction
Me-
management degree. And that transitioned to landscape architecture, just kind of looking at some of the stuff my dad was doing, what I was
Mhm.
used to doing, what
Yep.
that kind of life looked like for me. I was going to
Yeah.
be the outdoor builder, things like that.
Yeah.
And it became something where I kind of came into myself. I always say Greensboro kind of made me into a man a little bit.
Right.
So as I started to come into myself and figured out what I liked and disliked, and what I wanted for myself, that actually turned into what became the majority of my career, which is fitness. I changed my major to sports science and fitness management, and that was kind of the prefaces, if you will, to my career in the fitness.
Right. Excellent. And so you alluded to the fact you're on the 5-year plan. So it's interesting. It's interesting the small town parents, entrepreneurs. I sort of had a similar experience. My mom and dad had a business, and my mom was on the school board, and for like 12 years, like almost my entire time in the school district, my mom was on the board of education, which basically like runs the district, right? And which is like a political sort of thing. And so she like ran for office every couple of years, and teachers freaking hated me because my mom was negotiating their salaries and like, look, we don't have the money. It's like, you get a 3% raise, not a 5% raise or whatever. And so all I knew is like where I grew up was a great town. Like it was a great childhood. I knew I wanted to leave, and it was like a New York version of Snow Hill, you know. And so in any case, a lot of I sort of stitched together sort of like, okay, well, I need to leave, so I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to go to college, and I think I want to do this, but I didn't like that. And you sort of stitch the stuff together, and
Yeah.
Until you have kids and have to explain to them how that works,
Yeah.
you don't really realize like that's how most people make it happen, right? Like it's just
Right.
they get out there, get it going, and get started. And the cool thing about going to a university is like, well, I was going to be in construction management. Maybe I'm interested in business. Maybe I'm going to be a landscape architect. I mean, that's, construction management, landscape architect, they're sort of close. Fitness is out here, right? And so, but it's cool, right? So that's how people sort out their career and how they're going to make an impact on stuff.
Right.
So you get into this fitness career. So tell me about that. And then like you ended up starting a detailing business, and that's how we met. So tell me like the fitness career to detailing and how that works.
Yeah, well, I did want to say one point to your mom being on the school board. At my dad eventually, he actually stopped his landscape business and started my freshman year of 9th grade. He started as the assistant principal at my school, and he was there until I graduated in 12th grade, and that's when he left and transferred to a different school. So, there
wasn't a whole lot of latitude at work, right? Yeah.
It wasn't, but it had its perks here and there, I will say. But but going back to
don't screw with Aaron. His dad runs the place.
Yeah. So from then I learned how to kind of, I wouldn't say manipulate the system per se, but I kind of understood politics and how things work.
Yeah.
So
happens everywhere, right?
Absolutely. So fast forward to when I changed to fitness management, the trials and tribulation of a young man, and going through certain things, learning how to manage money and learn how to manage relationships and things like that. And I found myself, going to the gym a lot, probably more than I was going to some classes, I would say, to be honest with you. And that turned into a real passion of mine. It turned, at first it was more of an outlet for me. Like I said, I didn't really play a whole lot of sports, small town working. I didn't really come into my athleticism until like later on in life. So when I caught on to the fitness world and that whole ordeal, it really changed. It really like, it hit me. Like it really caused me. It was kind of like that vehicle for me to express myself as a young man and sort through things and manage responsibility, manage my mindset and things like that.
Yeah.
And my health, of course.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's I think a lot of successful people do that. I as you know, like I like to ride my bike, and
Yeah.
some of my best thinking happens on a bike. Like some of my best mental health happens on a bike, right?
Mhm.
And I know as a trainer in our company, I spend a lot of time talking to people like, hey, look, go get a gym membership. Like Planet Fitness is $10 a month. Like if you have a job, you can afford Planet Fitness. And it's just so much of a better outlet than drinking, drugs, beating shit. Like, again, you end up with 20-year-old kids. Like, I don't know what to do with my frustration. And it squeaks out as, drugs and alcohol and violence, or just sort of,
Absolutely.
running around, non-productive activities.
Right. And
And so,
I've always, looked at fitness. It's not just, physical.
right.
So I really broke it down into, it really translates into your everyday life in terms of, I mean, it makes you a better employee, it makes you a better friend, it makes you a better everything because you're willing to take a little bit of, temporary uncomfortability and
Yeah.
it makes you stronger, it makes you better for other people, and it helps you to overcome those things that you deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. There's nothing like focusing your mind on climbing a 1,000-foot hill in the middle of
Right.
traffic, or
Oh,
lifting
yeah.
or lifting weights or 100 push-ups. Like, dude, you need, like, you're at 80, keep going. Uh,
Exactly.
it's more productive. Hey, we need to talk to Celestin about putting that into our training program. Like, we need to add, like, do you have a gym membership to our training program for
Yeah,
managers?
I agree. I agree.
Good stuff. Um, so you're at UNCG or UNC NCA&T in Greensboro, and so you developed this interest in fitness and working out. Now, like, my understanding was you were a trainer, right? So like you're like getting
Yes.
paid to do this, right? Now, so tell me about that. Like, did you own a gym? Did you work in a gym? What's that whole business look like? Like, how does that work
Yeah.
economically?
Absolutely. So what happened was with me and my journey out, I'd already changed my major twice in school. Once I found that fitness was really where I wanted to take my career and what I was good at, what I was passionate about, I I actually had to, I was like, okay, how can I do this now? Do I really need a 4-year degree for this per se? So I started exploring my options for it, and I found that I could become certified through getting hired as a personal trainer at Gold's Gym. They would pay for you to become certified. So in the midst of some things going on back home with family and things like that, I kind of found myself in a financial situation where, okay, this responsibility is going to be on me now. I'm not really calling home as much. I'm not getting as much of that support along the way. So I'm kind of like, as a young man, I'm like, how do I find my own way? How do I blaze my own trail? How can I do it now? So
Right.
that turned into, me getting my personal training certification through Gold's Gym. I started there in Greensboro, learned all the classes, became certified, and even still, and that's really where my first real spark of entrepreneurial mindset and endeavors came, because I was like, okay, now I need to market myself. I need to make an Instagram. I need to be on
Right.
social media. I need to spread the word about what
Right.
I'm passionate about and how I can help people. So
Right.
that was the first wave of entrepreneurial endeavors that I really went down. I became known, around my campus. I became known in Greensboro for fitness. I was training people on the side and, of course, doing my thing at Gold's Gym. But when I looked at that pay structure, I was like, I probably should be doing this by myself because I'm giving Gold's Gym all my money, you know,
Right.
with my sessions. So I started training more students, going to the apartment gyms, meeting up with people there, training people from, some of the other jobs, side jobs that I had. I was working at Dick's Sporting Goods. I worked at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. So, just networking, and everybody always knew me for fitness.
Right. And so you weren't, so at any point did you become like a full-time trainer? Like I pay
Yeah.
the rent and feed myself as a full-time trainer.
Yes. So what happened was I'm still in my very adolescent years right now. I did all probably in 2021 range. So I don't
Yep.
know what I'm doing, to be honest with you.
You're
I know
figuring
I'm on
it
the
out. Hey,
right
you're
track.
figuring it out, right? You're
Yeah,
figuring
I
it
know
out.
I'm on the right track and it feels right. I'm like, oh, this is what I'm made. This is what I'm supposed
Mhm.
to be doing. So it was, and nobody I really knew immediately really knew exactly what that was. You want to be a fitness trainer? You're like, does that make money? What are you going to do? Get a job with NFL or something? I'm getting those kind of questions. Like, what are you
Right.
going to do with it? Nobody's really knowing like how you're going to support yourself, basically.
Right.
In those years, I ended up, making not the best financial situations in some areas with school and things like that. So I actually left Greensboro and came to Raleigh, North Carolina. When I got to Raleigh, North Carolina, I was actually able to, I transferred my Ruth's Chris job as a server over to the Ruth's Chris in North Hills. And I was able to stay with my aunt and uncle who live in Holly Springs, North Carolina. Um, so, and I'm leading up to how I became a trainer full time.
Yep.
I got introduced to a neighbor of my aunt that I was living with, and she invited me to this group fitness class, me and my aunt. So I went with them and I worked out, and we participated in the workout, and I saw this guy. He had a microphone on, loud music playing. He's giving everybody the motivation. All right, everybody, he's that fitness guy, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like,
But there's 40
oh,
people in a room paying them, right?
it's the full house, a full
It's
house.
full, right? You can't get in. You need to make a reservation.
Exactly. Like it's exclusive. It's in the middle of like this suburb community. It's a big deal. So I'm like, this is cool. Like I've done the one-on-one thing, but I haven't been in front of a group with a microphone. It's kind of like, man. So I was really intrigued by that. Soon as I went back home, I emailed this guy and said, hey, look, I'm certified. I want to help. However I can help, let me know. And he got back with me, and that was the start of a 8-year run of doing group fitness classes all around Raleigh and Nashville and even California for a while and back again. So that's my fitness career.
Yeah, interesting. There's like so many entrepreneurial lessons in there. One is like, the economics matter. Like, again, you're following your passion, which is something like I want to talk about a lot. There's a lot of this advice, like do what you're passionate about. I personally don't subscribe to that necessarily. I think the economics of it, like you got to worry about that because sometimes you can be really passionate and that comes with being poor. And at the end of the day, like you got to pay for rent, you got to pay for food. And, as I tell my kids, money doesn't make you happy, but it solves a lot of problems. And so you got these economics and like, hey, there's economics. If I can train one person and, do I get $20 an hour, $50 an hour, $100 an hour? I mean, at some point, like, Jeff Bezos is only going to pay so much for his personal trainer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the group side where like you put 40 people in a room and you're like, I'm getting $20 a person. That's $800 an hour. I could do that, 3 days a week. It looks like a whole different thing. And there's this whole concept of scarcity. Like, look, it's hard to get in. There's only 20 slots. You got to schedule it and pay up front. You can't make it. You pay for it, right? And there's all these cool business models in the fitness world, like Orange Theory, for example. Like I was an Orange Theory member for a while, and love the program, but you got to like sign up. Like I remember like the night before, like I got to get in. Like when do the classes open, right? So I can get in because I wanted to work out at the 5 a.m. session to 5:30, not 8 o'clock didn't work for me, 8 a.m. or whatever. And so what's interesting from an entrepreneur standpoint is that model of personal training and coaching and scarcity and scale and marketing, whether it's fitness or writing, how to write a book, how to be a fitness coach, how to get in shape, cycling, it's the same business model, right? Mm-hmm. Just the work's a little bit different.
Right.
And as I talk to other entrepreneurs, I'm like, look, someone's done what you want to do before. It may not have been with the same tool, right? It may not have been with the same product, but the concept is out there. and like stop trying to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
Right. You know, there's a couple of different ways you can run the economics, but like there's like 2 or 3 ways, and you can pick one, and they have their advantages and disadvantages. And again, that whole entrepreneurial story of, well, you know, I worked at Ruth's Chris and I was doing some training, and then I met a guy because, you know, again, you went Greensboro to Raleigh's, it's 100 miles, like you moved to a different city, like
Right.
living with family, you know, all that stuff. When you know, again, whether it's Aaron Summerville, Carl Murphy, Elon Musk, you know, everybody and everybody in between, it's the theme of like, I'm just going to continue to grind on it for a couple of years
Exactly.
is pretty constant. Um, you know, my entrepreneurial friends and I talk about people who don't want to grind as tourists, right? It gets hard and they like punch out. Like, you know, it's like, hey, I don't really want to live in Europe, but I'm going to go visit Europe for a year. I'm sorry, for a week or two, right? So I'm going to be a tourist, but I can leave, right? I don't want to live in, you know, Mexico City. I'm just going to go visit Mexico City for a week or two. And so
Oh yeah.
going
Yeah.
to a different country for people for their careers is very analogous to like, I'm going to go you know, I'm going to go start my own thing, whatever that
Mhm.
might be. And that journey of just like, I'm going to continue to grind on it. I'm going to associate with people who are successful. I'm going to have them help me, right? It's like it's super timeless from an advice standpoint and an experience standpoint. It's just, you know, again, you know, we actually come join Spiffy because of that whole experience, right? So it's,
Right.
you know, Scott and I are super, you know, we have a lot of admiration for that journey, because that
Right.
journey, you know, it helps you, as you know, it builds the resilience for like, hey, it got hard, I lose a customer, I gain a customer, the weather's bad, my gear breaks, whatever sort of the obstacle is, how do I hop over it and get on to the next thing? So
Yeah, it definitely builds resiliency, and the word journey has been like, and it's forever. It really goes on forever and ever. I would
right.
say there's so much to learn, and you know, I even it's so much that I did wrong that now is helping me now. You know, it's, you know, they talk about failures, and you know, and they talk about the losses, but you know, I found a lot of value in the mistakes that I made in my
100%.
youth, and
Mhm.
I'm still, you know, I'm 29 now, you know, and you know, I'm getting, you know, almost 30, but um I, you know, really, I've done a lot of assessments on the mistakes that I've made and the assessments that people before me have made. And those have really like gave me the confidence I need to really like keep going on, you know, this, you know.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So like I'm 20 years ahead of you, or older, or further down the journey, right? And I have to work very hard to uh, communicate that politely to other people, right? And so like people come up like, hey, I got this great idea for this business. I'm like, yeah, okay, tell me about it. And they're like, you know, here's some things that I think you want to think about. So here's what I would say, you know, so there's the one side, like, that's a shitty idea, the economics suck, and I know 5 people who failed at it, so let's go do something else. Like that's one story. And the other was like, well, look, you know, I'd think about the economics, I'd think about this, you know, it seems pretty challenging. Like you have a lot of passion, and I don't see the passion converting into money. If you just want to like go do it, that's fine. That's called
Right.
a hobby, where you spend money, right? Hobbies, you just spend money, right?
Hmm.
Entrepreneurship is where you put money in, it's an investment, and then at the end of the day, the week, the month, like there's some left over, we call that profit.
Exactly.
And if you're about this, I'm like, I don't see this turning into this.
Right. Right.
Uh, and so it's strictly one of the things, although I have gotten better to ask more questions of folks like that. I learned this from my partner, Scott, you know, our CEO. You know, it's like, I don't talk trash on ideas anymore, because I've had too many ideas I thought were stupid. And then the guy goes, sells his company for $100 million. I'm like, shit, that was a good idea, I just didn't see it. Right. So, you know, having the open-mindedness to really analyze ideas and talk about it. You can always tell though, like, someone will come to me with this idea, or they're working in something, and they have like a little side hustle that they want to make bigger. And I'm like, well, I'd love to talk to you about it in detail. Like, let's go get a cup of coffee or a beer, and let's like talk about, where do you want to take it? Right. Like, hey, you're doing, $5,000 a month? Do you want to do 50, 500, 5 million? Like, how do you get there? And if people don't want to have those conversations and they're not serious, they get dropped into the tourist bucket. Like, you're a tourist, right? And that thing's it'll peter out because you're not gonna focus on it. And so it's interesting. I love the entrepreneurial journey, and I love what it does for people, right? I mean, it's taken you a long way from Snow Hill, right? And
Absolutely.
there's this whole really cool journey that you've been on, right? So you joined Spiffy because you had a detail business.
Yeah. So
Where did the detail business come from? You're like a trainer. How does that show up? And then let's talk about how we found you, because like I didn't find you, like somebody else found you. You found us. I'm not sure.
Well, going backwards a little bit in terms of where all this detailing came from and where that skill came from. Little fun fact is, so in high school, we actually had me and a group of friends had like a car and truck club, if you will. A little group, I had a Camry.
I gotta bet there's more trucks in that club in Snow Hill than there were cars. But
yes, it was.
Snow Hill's like a pickup truck and fat tire off-roading sort of place, right?
That's exactly what it was.
So you're not that far from like swamp out there, I know.
But to also say that, because there was great trucks in the group, I had a car. So my car, I had to make sure my car was clean to stand up beside some of those clean trucks. So I was, cleaning my rims a little bit better than everybody else because my rims are small. I have smaller tires. I have a car. You have a Ford F-150 or a Silverado or something. So thinking back, that's really where I got some of the best skills as far as like detailing goes. On top of the work I was doing for my parents with, them being busy entrepreneurs, there's nothing for them to say, hey, I need both of those vehicles clean. I need the Ford Excursion clean. I need this F-350 clean that I just rode through mud or whatever. So it was always there. Fast forward, I went to school, started training and all of this. Fast forward to the pandemic. Pandemic started, I was still doing some group training. And all of that really, and I was on the tail end kind of on like a burnout phase of that anyway, looking for like, what's the next, journey that I'm gonna be going on. And pandemic hits. So when the pandemic hit, we were no longer able to go. I wasn't able to be in front of the people. When I put that microphone on and when I was, doing that, what I really loved, I wasn't able to do that. I had to train people like we're doing now on Zoom. So that wasn't fun to me. I didn't like that. So I ended up just it was really random, and I won't go too deep, but I believe everything happens for a reason. But my mom asked me to detail her car one day, just a random Sunday, and I'm out there detailing her car, and I'm like, and I had a whole lot of free time on my hands this time because I'm not training as much no more. It's pandemic, everybody's home. So I'm detailing her car. I'm like, and I was just doing it effortlessly. I wasn't really thinking about it. I was doing a great job, and it was just second nature. I'm just sitting there just detailing everything up with this great product. And I'm like, I'm not even really working that hard. This must be a gift of mine. This must be a strength of mine. I can clean, I'm organized, whatever. So took the car back. She paid me, which I didn't ask her to pay me. But then I said, you know what, let me ask, some more family members if they want their car detailed. And from there, I took pictures and I put them on Facebook, and all those people that I was training over the years in Raleigh, Holly Springs, Cary, once I put those cars up, I mean, my phone didn't stop ringing after that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you had a list of customers who trusted you to do good work. And you basically offer them a new product, right? Hey, I used to offer you this product where, I can make you sweat with a little bit of help and a little bit of focus, and basically like, the value to Carl on trainers has always been like, add 5 pounds and add 5 reps, you're like, right. And then there's just the accountability of like, I paid the dude, I got to go. Right. And a lot of it's just like, I need somebody to hold me accountable on the coaching side. But you had that list, right? And again, I talk about that to entrepreneurs so much. It's like, you just need a list of good customers, right? And it doesn't need to be a huge list. I used to read all this communication from this guy, Craig Garber. He used to have like this whole online marketing education. Like it was like how to write ads and stuff is basically what I got from it. But he wrote this book called Maximum Revenue, Minimum Customers. And it was like, he had, again, everybody's sort of got like a thing, but it's like how to make $1 million a year from 100 customers or something. And he sort of detailed out that. It's like, well, look, if you don't have 100 customers, do you have 500? Do you have 1,000? It changes the price. Like, they got more people, you got work. And so, but it's, it's very much how Spiffy started, right? We had this car, Scott and I had this car wash, and literally we just had, like, it just got jammed up on Fridays and Saturdays. So we did a lot of detailing. Like we did hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in detailing, where as opposed to car washing, right? So to me, car washing, show up, give me $20. I wash the outside, vacuum the inside, clean the windows, towel it off, and you're out, right? It's like a 15, 20 minute sort of thing. On a Saturday, maybe it's 30 minutes. But it's like full service car washing, right? That's one thing. And then there's the detailing. Give me the car. It's more like $100. I got to have the car all day. It's fix the paint, shampoo the seats. This is reconditioning thing. And we had a lot of that business. And we got to a point where it just jammed up the property. Like I have 25 cars being detailed. I'm doing 30 cars, 40 cars an hour in full service car washing on Fridays and Saturdays. And I tried all these things. I'm like, hey, can you come on Wednesday to get your car detailed? I'm like, no, I'm at work on Wednesday. Okay. Can you come on Monday? It's slow on Monday. No, we'd offer discounts. Like I'd offer $50 off a service to come have it done on Tuesday or Wednesday. Right. And people didn't want it, right? Like, it wasn't the discount. It was like, dude, I have 2 cars. My wife has one. I have one. And we use them during the week. I can afford to give you one on Saturday. And it's like, right. Okay. So, really the first like detailing we did was, I just want to get the detail vehicles off my property because I want to wash more cars. Because I would literally stand in front of the car wash on Saturday and I watch people pull in, they'd see the line and they'd drive away. They'd pull in, they'd see the line and they'd drive away, and I call my partner and he's like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, it's great. I just saw like $400 this hour drive away. Like one day I counted, it was 19 cars at like $22 a car. I'm like, $400 on a Saturday, it's 10 hours, maybe it's 8. It's like thousands of dollars a day. It's not quite that bad on a Monday, but we just had this capacity problem. And there's like a whole story around car washing around why that was, but we had a list that was like 20,000 people. And so I just said, hey, we're going to start doing mobile detailing. Would you like me to come to your house on Saturday? Send. And it like took off, right? And that was year one. And then like it got so busy, and then my partner like, look, I think we really like got into something. Like this is there's like the demand for this, right? And so that was sort of the genesis of Spiffy. And then a bunch of other stuff happened, right? iPhones and Uber and all this other stuff that sort of sent us down different path. So it's during the pandemic, you're pivoting out of fitness because you can't get in front of people to detailing because you got more time. So like you had a truck when I got that. Did you start with a truck or did you just like start with like, a duffel bag and a bucket? How did that go?
I started at the trunk of a Nissan Sentra.
That's not a truck. If you're not a car person, that's not a truck.
That is not a truck. 50-foot hose in the back in the trunk. The same car I would take my girlfriend out with. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes might be a little wet spot in the trunk that might have a little odor. But hey, what can I say?
Aaron's hustling. If you want Aaron's a hustler. Deal with it.
I am a hustler. So no shame in my game. So yeah, man, I was pulling up. I was hooking up. Had my own water hose on pressure washer, and I was just in the back of the trunk with it. And once it got to the point where I wanted to really take it seriously as a real business, I said, all right, let's go in. I made the commitment on my first van, and my first and only van. But I took a lot of pride in that van. I had it wrapped, I had it set up neatly, and I really had I put a lot of time and a lot of my resources into it because I wanted to present a good package whenever I pulled up in somebody's yard.
Yeah, the professionalism is important. I think people uh, entrepreneurs underestimate that a lot, right?
Yeah.
You know, when Scott and I started, you know, one of the questions we asked was, you know, how would Starbucks wash your car? Like,
Right.
they make coffee. Okay, you know, again, I grew up in this town in called Highland, New York, in upstate New York, and there were two diners. There was like the diner, the Highland Diner, and then
Mhm.
there was the Pastime Luncheonette, and they both had good food, but they were like diners, right? You go there, you get eggs, and you know, you didn't order steak there. You ordered like eggs, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah. Yeah.
pancakes, or
Yeah.
you know, English muffins, or
Both side of
a
hash
Danish.
browns.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's eggs, hash browns, two sausage, right? That's sort of what you ate there.
Gotcha.
We would go there for dinner sometimes. I'd order eggs because that was like the right thing to order, right? Like you didn't go there for a double caramel macchiato, right? Half calf with oat milk, right?
Mhm.
And
They're
so
gonna look at you like, what?
yeah, well, and the thing is, like, I remember going with my dad sometimes, like in the summer, like you know, I'm a kid, I go to work with him. He's like, "Hey, let's hustle up. I don't want to get the pastime too late." And I'm like, "Too late? It's like 7:30." He's like, "Yeah, but Joe doesn't make fresh coffee after 8 in the morning." Right. It's like, so, you know, you sort of get this pot on the burner, right? And it'd sit there from 8 to 11 or something. So it's like you don't get there before 7:30, you know, you get old coffee, right? And
Mhm.
so any case, I think that branding is super important, especially when you show up at somebody's house, right? Like, you know, Spiffy, and much like you, primarily started with consumers, and you pull up into their driveway and they're like, you know, what's who am I hiring? And there's this, rightly or wrongly, there's just this um conveyance of trust and professionalism. It doesn't
Right.
necessarily have to be that way, but it just is. So so smart move on your part.
And
So
that's always been my like that's always been my strength, as far as a presentation. I think it
mhm,
goes back to, you know, it really goes back all the way from entrepreneurship from my parents and the people that I did see
yep,
doing it growing up. I
yeah,
always
y-
admire what they did, and even from the service industry, like places like Ruth's Chris. I mean, there's
yeah.
just quality
Do you remember
standard.
when we met, what you were wearing? Do you remember this?
When we met,
We met online. Do you remember? Yeah, we had like a Zoom like this. You had a coat and tie on. Do you remember that? Like
oh,
like it was like it was yesterday. I remember. Yeah.
oh.
Well, you were like maybe you didn't have a tie. You were like, you were not dressed like a detailer when you showed up to meet
Oh
me,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
I probably was not.
Maybe not a tie, but you know, you had a jacket, you know, sort of, you know, dress shirt sort of thing.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
my
exactly.
point is my point is like you know, you know how to uh,
Well,
you
first
know,
impression,
personally market yourself on the first impression better,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It was funny. My son wanted to go work in a restaurant last summer, and he's like, "Well, you know, what should I do?" And I said, "Well, look, you know, hey, just go find the owners, find their emails, tell them you want to go work." It's like, "Oh, I'm only 16." I said, "Look, they want people who want to hustle." He's like, "Okay, I got some interviews. What do I do?" I'm like, "Put a clean shirt and a pair of khakis on, show up, and just tell them you want to work."
Yeah,
He's like, "That it?" I said, "It's just sort of that simple. Like,
it
look,
is.
you know, they just need to know that you're going to show up and hustle." And
Right.
then they're going to say, "Well, what are your shifts? And when can you work?" And just tell them, "Whenever you need me."
Whenever you need me to.
And
Exactly.
he got a job at a very nice restaurant, worked all summer, learned a lot. It was really informative for him, but it was just sort of these simple things. And again, you know, you're part of this now. It's Spiffy. Like, hey, what's the how do you become successful at Spiffy, right? Show up on time in uniform and care. It's
Thank
like
you.
not, it's a simple formula that a lot of folks struggle with executing on a day-to-day
Yeah,
basis.
and it cuts the fat off of the extra. I mean, 'cause that's what you want. You want to clean. You want cleanliness. You want you to care and on time. I mean, that's it. I mean, it doesn't really need to go that much deeper. If you have
Yeah.
those things, then you know you're the ideal employee.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about coming to work for Spiffy, be on time for your first day. Like if you show up late on day one, it's sort of like strike one, and we give you like two strikes. And so, you know, if you can't show up on the first day of work on time, you know, it's just you're never going to be on time. And we sell, you know, one of our value propositions is convenience, and that manifests itself as being on time or early. And so it's just not convenient for folks if you're late and you can't get done, things done on time or in the spec that we said. So we talk about it just because it's something we struggle with new folks coming across the bow, trying to jump into our boat and be part of our team. You gotta show up on time. So you've got a truck, you've got a detail business that's humming along. How did you find us, and then how did you decide you want to sell your business? I think this is always a difficult decision for entrepreneurs. Like, when do I sell? What's the value of selling? Do I, in your case, you joined a team. How'd you think about joining Spiffy versus just, I'm just going to take a check and go do something else? Like, what was that whole thing going through your head?
Yeah, so by that time, that's been about a 2-year span. I had my business, and what led me to Spiffy, I was actually being led to Spiffy in the very beginning, I believe, because one of the first things that I told, one of my partners of mine, I told several people this. I said, hungry and motivated. I got this new business. I got, a great product. I'm like, okay, who are the competitors? Who else is doing this in my market? And I would only see Spiffy vans everywhere I was going. And the only thing I will always say and tell people is Spiffy is gonna know who I am.
Okay.
And I wouldn't talk junk. I wasn't like saying anything. It was just like, Spiffy gonna know who I am. And that was before I was just like, I'm gonna detail these cars. They gonna know who I am. That's it. And I said it over and over. And I even went to a couple customers in between those 2 years that, had even mentioned Scott to me and what he had done and tell me about Spiffy and, all of these things. So Spiffy has always been in my psyche, in my
right. Well, and you're from Raleigh, which is where our headquarters is.
Right.
We have 25 trucks, and between 7 and 8 in the morning, like, it's hard to not see a Spiffy truck on the highway.
Yeah.
They all sort of roll out like FedEx vans or UPS vans or
exactly.
Amazon
Then
vans.
scattered. I'm just in my one little van and I'm seeing Spiffy vans like scattered all around me. So
right. Well, and our warehouse is like right in the middle of, like, if there's like 4 highways in Raleigh, our warehouse is like dead center in the middle, so they all get on the highways, and again, it's sort of during commuting hours, and so it's funny. Like, I have friends who are like, I see your vans everywhere. I'm like, where'd you see the van? He's like, well, I saw it on I-40. I'm like, I see your vans everywhere. I saw it on I-40. I'm like, well, they got to get on I-40 to go everywhere, pretty much,
exactly.
right? So, but
and it doesn't hurt. Cool. They look great. It's a blue penguin. It's just like, I'm just riding and I just see like Spiffy just passing by with the penguin. I'm like, man, they get into it. So that's what led me to Spiffy. I always was conscious of Spiffy. I knew about Spiffy, and so at my mark where I was, looking to sell and things like that, and maybe get into something different. I really just made the call, man. I just made a decision, and it came from a lot of reasons. One being that, going back to what you were saying with, entrepreneurship is not necessarily about just passion. And, I knew that. I always have known that. But my only problem was that I won't say I didn't have it. It was very hard for me to apply the skill of true entrepreneurship because I didn't really learn it like I really probably should have, So I've always been big into mentorship. I've always been a student. I want to know. I want to read books. I want to gain the knowledge, and I want to meet and talk to people who have actually done it and be around those people. And honestly, maybe it's because of me, but I wasn't in the enough environments to really get that true entrepreneurship, skill set. Mm-hmm. I knew my strengths. I have strengths of entrepreneurship, but I also knew my weaknesses as well. So, I knew that when I was looking at where I wanted to go with my van, my business, I can make a great business. I can have a great concept. It look great. It be professional. We show up on time and they have all those great qualities. But how do I scale this business and take it to where somewhere like Spiffy has? Mm-hmm. So I really was looking for that type of mentorship, and I was looking for that type of, environment that I could grow in, that I could apply my skills and my strengths to. And, they had theirs, because clearly Spiffy knows exactly what they're doing as far as, scaling a business, growing a business, managing and becoming successful. And I wanted to be a part of that. So I said, you know what, I have a decision as an entrepreneur to go out here and figure out how to do it, or I can figure out who I can partner with to learn and grow and be and make my, really sharpen my skills, So I made the call, man. I came back. I actually went on a 2-day vacation. Well, it was a couple more days. I went like a 3-day vacation in Miami, and came back the next day. And I was on my way to do a detail. It started raining. I parked my van, and before I got out of the van, I called Spiffy.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, that was the start of how everything played out from there.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, good story. So we're excited to have you. Super impactful on our team, right? So if you're a detailer out there and you're interested in selling your business, or you're interested in talking about it, give us a call. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It worked out with Aaron and his crew. We talked earlier. There's an earlier podcast about the pit crew guys. Similar story, little different, but similar. They got a little bit bigger than you. Took some outside capital, and so interesting. It's interesting to compare you and them. I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I was talking to a guy who has this, he's like 40 years old. He's got like this little side hustle startup business, and software business, and he wants to, leave his full-time job, go full-time, and not raise capital. I'm like, dude, it doesn't work that way. Like, you need outside capital. Capital is required to grow. You can generate it yourself, right? You pull it out of the bank, or you pull it out of your customers, right? Or you give it to an investor, or from an investor, right? Those are sort of your options. The idea of like, someone's going to give me money, they're not going to take equity, and I get to keep everything, is like not how it works. And he didn't really like that story. And I said, look, it's just, you can choose to like not take equity, or not take investment from someone and not give equity. That's a choice, right? It's your business. It has consequences, right? And you can take equity, and that has consequences. And you just got to sort of decide what you want to do. If you're thinking about entrepreneurship, right, the best thing you can do is be like Aaron and start early and start iterating and grinding it out. And that story is just so timeless, the way you've pursued that. And so congratulations on that. So now you're on. So you come to Spiffy, right? So this is always interesting. I hazard to. I worry about what your answer might be. So what was your impression, like good and bad, on the way in, right? So like you talked to Connor, right? And Connor sort of like, we figured out sort of how we're going to pay for this and what you're going to get. And then there's always a question, do you guys want to come work for us, right? Or do you just want to like sell us your business? And you said you want to come work for us. So then you went around the company and you met some folks. So tell me about what that process was like, and what were your first impressions from the outside?
From the outside, yeah, absolutely. So I think that who I spoke to in the very beginning gave me a great impression of the company. That made me feel very comfortable. That made me feel very valued. I spoke to Connor. I spoke to Scott, Crystal. I spoke to Celeste, Tiffany, and all of those guys, just gave me that they really kind of like gave me that confidence that I was in the right mindset of wanting that mentorship, and what they were saying to me and how they were treating me in that beginning process. It let me know that like these are the kind of people that I want to be around, that I want to work with and grow with and gain skills from. And that was from the first call I had with Connor. Like I said, coming from being an entrepreneur and working for myself and things like that, it's been a while since I've been in front of the screen being interviewed, But even that was like, I just felt very comfortable. It was a very smooth process. And I think with the first time I stepped inside the Spiffy HQ, that further just put a bigger stamp on, just like, yeah, this is what you were envisioning for your business, for my business that I had previously. They're doing it, and and you can learn, and you can provide, I can provide my skills and my skill set in this place and help it to become more successful.
Yeah.
And that just motivated me. And how that whole thing played out as far as the interview process, once they offered me a position on the operation training team, it was like a perfect puzzle piece because of the training and the fitness background. I love to teach naturally. I'm a natural teacher. That's just a skill of mine. And once I was offered that, it's like, how did y'all know I was going to be such a, how did y'all know I was a trainer already? Like this works, So it was just a great process. I think it happened very smoothly, very organically, and also strategically. I think how everything played out just really worked well for everybody.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. So you are an excellent trainer. Like again, I would say for those of you, if you're watching or listening to the podcast, Aaron's on like level 5 of his energy level, and he goes to like 15, right? So I've seen him at 15. We have to like chain him down sometimes, but like like, hey, slow down and talk slower. Like you're just a little excited for training, but it's great though. But it's and so you're doing a lot of these training videos for our operations guys, and so again, it's just super awesome fit for us. The other thing is, so then I said, hey, look, Aaron's like business owner and a entrepreneur. Like, let's go send him to some of the cities and just go snoop around and tell me what's out there, right? And and so most of my guys have figured this out, but I just send some dude into town and like, hey, what's he doing? How's it going? Can I help you wash some cars? And so I said, Aaron got sort of this like, James Bond secret squirrel mission, like go check out how things are going. And he came back with like 2 ledger pads of like, Carl, we have work to do. It's some of it like the beauty of an entrepreneur is like, you expect like perfection, right? You expect the Mona Lisa, and we're here sort of painting by colors in some places. And so then I had to like talk, so then I think my perception was Aaron's like, hey, wait a second, the headquarters is squared away, but everywhere where we deliver services, like they have issues, right? And so like, Aaron, look, go look at the ratings. We have good ratings, 4.8 out of 5.
Right.
Like, the customers are happy, right? We don't damage it. Look at our speeding data. Look at, it's low. Like, we don't have a lot of speeders. We haven't damaged anything like this month, right? He's like, okay.
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, let's pick some of the little stuff off and go fix it. Right? Like, let's go,
For sure.
And so it was interesting. When you came back, I was a little nervous you were going to like punt, because it was like, we dropped you into a couple of places that were in need of some cleanup and some management.
Yeah. Right.
Because again, I think for the entrepreneurs out there listening, when you scale, like every place doesn't scale at the same rate. It doesn't scale at the same quality. And we have probably 10 different data points that we measure on a daily and weekly basis. And there's like revenue and profits, and those are some of them, but then there's all these other things like, HR complaints and workers' comp injuries and speeding, right? And so we get like real-time data from every one of our trucks. Like, a guy breaks the speed limit, like alarms go off in the headquarters, right? And so we use those to sort of dial in and dial in the performance of the team. We actually have this ratings chart, and it starts like, it's count it backwards, right? So it started going up, and it was sort of hatchety on the way up, and then we got up to like 4.8, and then it sort of bounces around, and then we add a new city, and the new city like, and we have to like get it back up again, and so we have these all this data that's it's how we maintain sort of high performance. And then we have guys like Aaron who are going around and like, okay, well, we got we got a problem in city X. I need you to go do something. So what has been the most fun thing you've done at Spiffy so far?
The most fun thing, I would say, the most fun I have is when I'm able to go into a city, with a specific mission and just, hop in a van with the technician and have that conversation with him and just kind of hear what his background is and how he started with Spiffy. And, my favorite thing is mentoring, younger guys and, that really probably aren't that far from my age, where
Right.
I was just probably, in a similar position as them. And, just giving them that guidance and try to drop little gems on them here and there about just like, well, what are you doing for your future, man? Like, are you utilizing the benefit package that we have here at Spiffy? Or, like, what do you do for fun? How you spend just little
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
the same things I wish somebody would have been kind of instilling in me a little bit better at that age too. You need that. You need that person that you can look at that you kind of see some similarity in yourself, and it gives you that confidence and that hope that, okay, maybe I can make a change here and there. Maybe I can put a little money to the side. Maybe I can put money in the 401k plan, and let me learn about the stock options that I have with Spiffy and things like that. So
Yeah.
those kind of conversations are probably the most fun that I have, other than just going around and just seeing how different CBUs work in different markets.
Yeah, interesting. My favorite Aaron Summerville impact was you made a training video for a large customer of ours who shall remain nameless, on how to clean their trucks in 6 minutes or less, right? And so we had several people cleaning. It was like a whole process. And for the most part, Spiffy is a one person, one truck, one service business, but this client wanted us to wash a lot of vehicles in a short amount of time. And we felt we needed to build a different process around it. And I was getting a lot of pushback from the team. We can't do it. This isn't the way we operate. It takes too long. We can't make money at it. I don't like this, et cetera, et cetera. And Aaron works for this guy, Celestin. I said, Celestin, like, I need to go sell these guys on how we do. We were doing it well in one city. We're doing it well in Raleigh, in fact. And I said, look, can you just go out there and like take some video and take Summerville along? And like, I need like a high five sort of like, this is awesome video. And it's sort of like a mix of like Monday Night Football and Tony Robbins meets Car Wash and Detail. Right? I mean, is it not?
I would take that.
Aaron's like completely amped up like Tony Robbins, right, on stage, right? So that's number one. And then we got all this activity around, and guys are running into the truck and they're cleaning, and then there's vehicles moving, and Aaron's, and we filmed this ourselves, so there was like, the production planning was like 15 minutes on property, right? Like there was no Spielberg around, right? There was, George Lucas had left the building at this point, right?
Yeah.
And so there's guys there's trucks in the background. And if you watch the training video, there's like, so we've watched it a couple, well, we watch it a lot, but some of the guys are like, hey, what about that guy? Where did he go? And so there's all this energy, but the net is we said the guys need to do this process in 10 minutes, and Aaron shows them how to do it in 6, and the guys are basically moving along. It was pretty cool, but
Cool, man.
I think the impact on the company was equally the energy that you brought to it. Beyond, there's like the data, right? There's like the information, like here's how we do it, here's the process, it works, we're showing it to you live. But then there's just the enthusiasm and the excitement. Some people are like, hey, Carl, who's the new dude in the video? Like, because you hadn't gotten to the city, or hey, can I get that guy in my town, my city? I need some of his mojo down here. And so
Yeah, man.
again, I think it's that positive attitude, and that fitness trainer sort of like, I need another 5 reps out of you sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
That was pretty good. So what's the future hold for you at Spiffy? What do you so you're on the training team. What do you want to do next? I mean, and it could be, what's your personal future? What's your future at Spiffy? Like, what are you thinking about for the next year or two?
Yeah, well, I'm still fairly new in the operational trainer, field right now. I'm enjoying working with that team. We're doing some really cool things with training as far as central onboarding and implementing some new kind of certifications, if you will, for some of our processes, and I'm really enjoying being a part of that. Contributing to that, learning from those guys on that team that have been with Spiffy for more than
long time.
5 years, some of them.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, so I'm learning a lot. Go out in the field with those guys a lot of times, and so I'm just getting acclimated to that. I'm looking at ways where I can make a bigger impact on, just educating and mentoring technicians. Figuring out how I can do more of that. And looking forward to also, like you said, with the videos, man, looking forward to creating new content for Spiffy.
Yeah.
New training videos.
You need to have Celeste walk you over to the marketing department. Like, I think we need some Aaron Summerville energy on marketing videos.
I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah, so cool. So we're coming up on like an hour together. Thanks so much for your time. You got it. As we wrap up, do you have any questions for me? And any questions about Spiffy or anything?
Well, I think I have a lot of admiration for you, as the president of the company that I work with. And I know every time you come in and do a presentation for training, I always have my ears wide open. I definitely admire how you lead this company, and your style of leadership. I'm sure you hear all kinds of opinions, but me, for one,
Hey, look, we're gonna snap that, and we're gonna play it at the beginning of every Monday meeting.
Put that on the front. Yeah, put that on the front. Yeah.
I don't know that everyone necessarily approves of that. I say approves, enjoys it.
If we play it enough, it'll become repetition in people's minds and start believing it.
Yeah.
But I would say, as far as my question goes, other than the military experience and things like that, how did you cultivate such a how did you cultivate your leadership skills?
That's a really good question. No one's ever asked me that. I think it's so it's funny you asked me this. So I build a lot of training. So Aaron knows this. For everybody listening, I build a lot of the training for our general managers, right? And so things that I think they need to be level set for the company, like, how to, our vocabulary at Spiffy. I give this class called Spiffy Economics. One of the things that I'm going to add going forward is this class called Management versus Leadership, right? And management is like running the calendar, having a checklist, right? It's the who, what, when, where, why, who, what, when, where, and how, right? It's just sort of like the mechanics of it, right? Like, imagine a guy with a clipboard, right? And then the leadership is getting people to like want to do it and sort of want to do it on their own and want to do it on their own well. For me, I played football, right? I played football in high school and I played football in college for a Division III team that, no scholarships. We were excited to have our friends in the stands on Saturday. And so we played because we love football. And we loved our buddies, not necessarily because it was counterproductive to every other reason why we're in college playing football. And I learned a lot from my coaches, both in high school and in college. I went to Georgetown and I don't know, I don't think a lot of people know this, but Georgetown's a tough place to get into. And my high school football coach, this guy, Carl Relier and Carl, God, I forget the guy's name, escapes me. In any case, my head football coach says, "Hey, Murph, Georgetown has a football team and they're looking for smart kids who can play offensive line." Like, literally says it. I'm like, "Really?" I said, "Well, I'm going to college, coach. Georgetown wasn't on my list, but I said I can add it," right? He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Take this little brochure and come back and we'll send him some tapes and I'll tell him you're awesome." And literally, and so Georgetown's a tough place to get into, and you need to like something other than like good grades, right? Because everybody who applies has good grades, and so you need like, half the people are there for some other reason than just good grades, and that was one of them. And so I learned that like you got to help people, and you got to be looking out for people, and you got to help people develop and grow. And my coaches in football in college were like that also, right? So like you're a senior at Georgetown, and no one is going to the NFL to play football, right? Like we had one guy, he like tried out, and we all sort of laughed at him, and he got his, he went to the Redskins track practice, and he got like crushed, right? Because at 5'11", at 5'10", 240, he was solidly 3 inches too short and 50 pounds too light, right? And so the coaches, like, they got to help you with work, right? Where do you want to go into finance? Do you want to go to law? What do you want to do? And so that there was a lot of help around that. I was in the Army, right? So I had really, really good mentors in the Army. There's this guy, Dave Barno, who was probably the best mentor I've ever had in my life. He turned out to be ended up leaving the military as a 3-star general. He ran the war in Afghanistan for a year and a half or whatever. And he was excellent. And he had this like delicate balance between being incredibly technically adept and like an expert at his job, but setting appropriate standards and caring for people. And so there's like this Venn diagram. You got to care for people, you got to be an expert at the job, you got to be able to get the mission done, and then there's sort of like this X factor that you have to inject in depending on what you need more of. And some of the X factor was like, how do you take care of guys so their wives don't divorce them, because in the Army that's like a problem. And then some of the X factor is like, how do you motivate partners to do stuff? And so and for all of my friends who I was in the Army with, all of us to this day, 35 years later, still talk about like Dave Barno stories and how he, led us. So to give you an example, we were on a training event in the desert, and so two really interesting stories. So it's the Mojave Desert, right? So I'm in LA right now, and so it's like 3 hours west of here is this place called Barstow, California, National Training Center, and we had to attack this enemy position, right? It's like an Army thing. And so it's hot, it's July, right? So we were supposed to finish, so we attack all night, and we're supposed to finish up in the morning, like 8 or 9 o'clock. And the weather's forecast to be like 106 at 10 in the morning. And so Dave Barno tells the guy who's in charge of feeding us and providing us food and gas and water, he's like, I want 10 pounds of ice for every soldier on the objective when we're done.
Okay.
And I was there for this, and the guy is a captain. He was older than me. He like laughs, and Barno looks at him and was like, Captain, Smith, I said 10 pounds of ice on the objective at 10 o'clock. That's your mission if you'd like to keep your job. And I mean 10 net. So you need to account for melting, right? And the whole place like, and then he's like, so then this captain's like, well, sir, like it's hot, and like, how am I supposed to get it there? And he's like, you have the entire resources of the 82nd Airborne Division at your disposal. I pay you to figure it out. And then he goes, there's this Army manual, FM 25, whatever, desert operations. It has a calculation of how fast ice melts in the desert at different temperatures and humidities, because it melts differently depending on temperature and humidity. So he goes into this whole thing about desert operations, and he's like, why don't you go make a plan and come back to me in 2 hours with what you've figured out so far, and I'll help you stitch the rest together, right? And so the net is like, we end up attacking, and it's hot as it's blazing hot in the morning, and in flies this Chinook helicopter with 2 pallets of ice on it, and in the back of the Chinook is this captain with a big smile on his face, like, I figured this out, right? And it's dripping water, right? Like it's flying in, and it lands these 2 pallets of ice, and the cable, the ropes fall off, and the Chinook flies away, and homeboy dropped 10 pounds of net ice to everybody on the objective. And so so there's the management side of it, like, how do you get, like, that's like a difficult management task, right? And the leadership task was like, the boys are going to be effing smoked, right?
Yeah.
And he knew that because he was like a soldier. He was out in the field, he's carrying a rifle, he's like so he knew that. So like, how do I like re-energize the American soldier in the middle of the desert at 10 in the morning? It's like, well, like, everyone's sitting there, like, you're sort of in your little hole or whatever, and then this helicopter comes in, right? And then it's like, what does the thing have? Like the first helicopter injected had ice, right? It's dripping, and then 15 minutes later, some dude shows up and is like, here's your bag of ice, Private Smith, right? And then his thing was like, look, the privates get the ice first because the privates carry the most weight and the privates are the most tired, right? So it's like, so as a lieutenant, I was sort of like in the middle of the food chain for ice, and then like, Colonel Barno was the last guy to get his 10 pounds ice, but he got 10 pounds ice.
Yeah.
And so
That's awesome.
and so you take those soldiers and like, hey, we just conquered the objective, and the boss brought me ice. And you can't imagine how inspired. I mean, you can, right? How inspiring that is to a private. Like, I'm ready to go. Like what's the next? Put my rucksack on, give me more ammo. I'm ready to conquer the next hill.
Guys have my
right?
bag.
Yeah, and that's sort of the leadership side of it. Like, it's this intangible of like, we're going to deliver ice to the objective, basically on the sun. And I'm telling you, the officers I work with and who are in that meeting, we talk about that to this day about like, the mixture of the management excellence and then the leadership excellence of marrying those two together. And it's been challenging. Like, it's interesting, like leading in the Army was different than leading like in the production world of sort of automotive world. And a lot of it comes back to, we're reading this book at Spiffy called Who Not How, right? And some years ago, I realized it was really just about the people and not about the how. And, in the military, the United States Army, we have volunteers. It's volunteer Army. Like, if you're in green anywhere, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, like, you volunteered a couple of times. There's some hurdles to get there. You got to pass a drug test. You got to pass a physical fitness test. You got to go to boot camp, right? And the Army's sort of like, you don't want to be here, get out. Like, we don't want people who don't want to be here. So the whole the team sort of self-selects. In the commercial world, like, there's people who just want a job, and then there's people who want like the mission, right? Like, you're excited about the mission, the passion, and we have some employees that are like that, and then we have some employees that are sort of like on the bubble, and then we have some employees like, it's check, right? And so you got to manage. It's harder to manage the folks who just want to check, right? And it's sad, but to me, a lot of it's just having respect for them. Like, look, I have respect for the work. I have respect for what you do. You need to have respect for what we need to be successful, right? And that's like show up on time in uniform and care. And we talk about that. And again, it's little stuff. We've talked about these things internally. We have this huge success story where I went into the city. We had a manager who terminated because he was doing some sort of bad stuff. And like, the city ran on its own for like a month. And I show up and I'm like, it's running well. Like, there's like 6 technicians that are basically just like managing themselves. And I'm like, what do you guys need? And like, we need an ice machine. I'm like, you need an ice machine? It's like, yeah, it's Las Vegas. It's Las Vegas. It's hot, Carl. I'm like, okay, well, you got coolers. Like, Carl, I spend $5 a day on ice. I work 20 days a month. I'm spending $100, $200 a month on ice, and I'm making 15, 18 bucks an hour, 20 bucks an hour, right? It's $100 is, a day's worth of work, 2 days worth of work, right? And so we got him an ice machine, and like, the place went bonkers. It was like New Year's Eve when we got him an ice machine. And funny story, like, management versus leadership. Like, the leadership decision was, kid needs ice machine, just go buy the ice machine. It was like a $500 investment or something. And we had a manager in the corporate headquarters, Carl, who's going to get a permit for the ice machine? Who's going to install the ice machine? I said, look, just have it delivered, and ask them to send you a picture when it's installed.
Right.
All right. And she's like, Carl. And so this is like, a month later, she's like, it was delivered on Tuesday and it was installed on Wednesday, and they're super happy. She's like, how does that happen? I'm like, $100 a week for ice. They figured it out. So, right. And so, I don't think they needed a lot of guidance on how to like plug it in and find a water source. Like, we wash cars, we have water. Well, they'll figure it out. Right.
Exactly.
So it's like a long answer. I think, going back to your experience, I guess the journey, right? Like, I try very hard to not make the same mistake twice. It helps you iterate faster. I have made the same mistake twice. You make it 3 times or 4 times, you're like, God, I need to do this differently. But it's again, I think it's It's getting out into the field, generating revenue, talking to customers, caring for employees, and just trying to treat people the way you want to be treated. I think is how that works. I have this, like, I sort of transition between, like, I'm the sergeant in the field and I'm the president of the company. And it seems to be rare. And that's a result of me being in the Army.
Yeah.
Again, like I talked about this guy, Dave Barlow, who's a colonel, like, you'd be digging a hole in the middle of the night and, like, he'd show up with a shovel and start helping, right? It's 2 a.m. or whatever. It's, there's a snowstorm and you're waiting for a helicopter to pick you up, and he, like, shows up next to you, like, ready to go. And so we do that here, and it freaks guys out. Like, I was just in Portland working with one of our teams on an overnight project with one of our clients, and the on-site manager's like, "Carl, when are you going to your hotel?" I'm like, I don't know. And then he comes back, says, "Carl, are you going to the hotel tonight?" And I'm like, "Dude, we're here to, like, take care of the customer. Like, I'm going to leave when we're done. Why are you so concerned about when I'm going to the hotel?" He's like, "Well, I'm just nervous that the president's here, and I just can't imagine that, you'd stay here all night." I said, "Okay, well, here's the deal. I leave when we're done, so let's get the work done, and then I can go to bed."
Right.
But other than that, like, and he's like, "Well, why are you here?" I said, "Well, you have a new wash mission, and your GM is out of town. Your regional manager is in a different city, and the training team is all busy. So the next man up is me. So I'm here." And he's like, "That's confusing." I'm like, "That's spiffy."
That's Spiffy.
Right. And I said, "Look, those guys, well, it's just like," I said, "Look, if it was like, if it was rotating tires training, I probably wouldn't be the guy doing it. Like, I can sort of do it. Like, it's not my expertise, but I can wash some cars, and I can wash them pretty efficiently, and I can show you how to, like, take what you think's an hour and do it in 15 minutes. And so we went through that, right? So that's, so long story about my history, and then just sort of an example at Spiffy about, you just got to go out there and go deal with folks, and then that tends to permeate all the managers. Like, you see that, right? You see that among the GMs and the RMs, and again, everybody has a different area of expertise. Some people are better at some things than others, and so we try to put them in places where they're great, right? And just take care of the customers.
Right. That's what it all comes down to me too, is just the people, man. Just treating people right. Being able to put, your personal needs sometimes to the side, and just be strong enough to be able to help other people and be there for other people.
The other thing, in answering your question, like, again, we don't have a lot of drama in the company. We have very little politics. And it comes from 2 things, right? Well, it comes from our culture, which is best summarized by customer first, employee always. We talk about that in training, right? Customer first, employee always. And so we sort of run all decisions through that. And so if our job is to take care of the customer, right, whatever they pay us for, and then care for the employees, like 95% of decisions sort of get sorted out with that filter. And people don't, and I talk about this in training. I said, "Look, we change oil on Christmas Eve. We change oil on Christmas Day. We rotate tires. We put new tires on vehicles for our customers because, rental car companies, transportation companies, like, the world is continuing to move, and we're there making sure the vehicles are maintained. So somebody's got to work Christmas Eve, right? Somebody's got to work Christmas Day. Now, like, if the guy's a lay minister and he's expected to be at his church on Christmas Eve for service, then maybe we should give him that time off.
Yeah.
And then he can work New Year's, right?
Right.
Let's go find the atheist who has no religion, and let's go put him on, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and give him some other time off. And that's how you balance, an example of customer first, employee always.
Right.
And it comes down to uniforms and schedules and all that sort of thing. And so I think that if you've run all the decisions through those filters, then generally people don't think you're making bad decisions because you're anchoring on one of those 2 things.
Right.
We just had this discussion about, we have a lot of business in Florida, and there's just a hurricane there. And, we made the decision to pay the employees for the time that the hurricane was shutting down operations. It's not technically our policy, and so but we said, look, there's going to be this huge natural disaster. They got to go deal with their families. The last thing they need to worry about is like, I'm short 2 days, I'm short 16 hours of pay or whatever, right? In the face of flooding and damages and all the other sort of chaos that comes along with that. And so, so that was an employee always sort of decision from Scott. In fact, is very supportive of that. And so, again, I think that helps build strong culture, that helps make good decisions, and those things sort of help sort out the how do I manage and lead the crew.
Right.
So
thank you for that.
Yeah, long answer. We need to do that again. You need to ask me that again next time we have a training class. I think
right. Yeah,
it's a good one. It's a good one we need to give to the whole team. Because again, we hire people from other companies and they don't always have that cultural outlook.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
So
you're right. Absolutely.
All right, man. Are we ready to wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good if you're good.
Awesome, man. Aaron Summerville, corporate trainer, Spiffy. Thank you for your time today. My name is Carl Murphy. I'm the president and co-founder at Get Spiffy, and Spiffy is the digital-enabled mobile car care business, changing the way fleets and consumers manage their vehicles. And this is the Operations Underground, where we interview people who are getting it done. Thank you, Aaron, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks, man.
Thank you.